Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the first online edition of the topic in case AP style presentations. I know that we've all been doing them weekly in class together, and this is a new change of pace. So I'm just going to start off and tell you this has never been done before, and I'm looking forward to it all. And I'd like to thank you all for being patient with the switch to the online classes that we've never seen before. I'd like to thank our Professor Tammy as well for being so easy to work with during this time and being really flexible with all of this. And it's been hard, and I really appreciate you guys' patience with me and bear with me throughout all of this. This is something I am not used to as well either, so I appreciate it, and I can't wait for us to begin this presentation. And I know you're all not here, but I'm going to still act like it, and I'm still going to make it applicable and try to make it as relatable to you all as possible. So just bear with me throughout the process. So today we will be talking about the press release, and I'm really excited. So let's move forward. Let me change the lighting a little bit here. It's just a little bit difficult for us all to see. So let's focus that in. Okay, there we go. Much better. Okay, so the press release, also known as the news release, uh, it is a interchangeable term. But PR professionals use a wide variety of toolbox skills. As you can see, I even have a little bit of a graphic of a toolbox up here as well. But they use news releases, they use public service announcements, media conferences, special events. Today, particularly, we will be talking about the news release and press release, as I mentioned earlier. But there are a wide variety of tools that practitioners use regularly and they use often. So let's do a deeper dive. A study done by the Artetic Group found that to generate story ideas, 77% of journalists use press releases and 80% use public relations sources. So, the press release, the primary purpose behind it, it's the most common form of public relations tactics. It's a simple document, and the purpose behind that is to disseminate of it's the dissemination of information from the PR sources to the mass media. So that can be to newspapers, broadcasting stations, magazines, newsrooms, particularly in the past couple years. I'm sure, as you all know, they've had a big staff cut and dramatically. And so in recent years, they've had to utilize PR practitioners as an opportunity to deliver worthwhile content to the media through press releases. So they're really relying on us to make a greater impact. And a great deal of information is distributed in weekly or daily publications, such as publicists and PR practitioners on behalf of their clients and employers. So, what to consider when we are writing press releases? So, the main thing that we want to consider is what is the key message here? The answer should be expressed in a simple one sentence. So, what exactly at the end of the article do you want the reader, or the publics, to get out of it? What are they really trying to learn? And who is the primary audience in all of this? Uh, is it the consumers who are buying the product or service? Is it purchasing agents or agencies or other companies? The answer depends on each person, organization to organization. If you sent this release to a daily community newspaper or a trade magazine or a local blog post, that also depends on the release. So who is reading these sources? Who is the reader on a daily community newspaper, a trade magazine, or a blog post? You have a wide variety and demographic of audiences there. And what does the target audience gain out of the product or service that you are trying to disseminate through this press release and this message? And what are the potential benefits and rewards they're going to get out of it? What are they going to learn? What are they going to gain out of this experience? And what objective does the release serve? Is it to increase product sales, to increase the organization's reputation, or increase attendance at an event? And I know a lot of you all have done a lot of work, especially with nonprofit agencies and groups, and they rely heavily on press releases, particularly and that outreach and the release of, like, what is the purpose of the release and who does it serve, especially in getting increased attendance at their events, as well as getting a lot of people to donate or volunteer to their organization. And that is why nonprofit groups rely so much on PR and outreach, because they wouldn't be where they are without being able to relate and get to those publics and those target audiences. So I know a lot of you all have done work, and you have also done a lot of work and had internships and done a lot of work in particularly BoilerCom. I know we've discussed that, but this, you're going to learn a little bit more even today in the presentation. So think like a journalist. So basically, when you are writing press releases, you have to think like a journalist, and basically you have to be able to craft your message to what a journalist would view as important. I know recently we did have a journalist herself come to our course and kind of talk about how to think like a journalist and how to craft those messages and important stories. And that's something that we're going to learn here today. So basically, like I touched upon earlier, number one, write a well-crafted news story. It needs to have a breath of fresh air. It has to be well-crafted and interesting. And number two, I mean, it has to follow the traditional W's and H. The who, the what, the when, the why, and the how. You have to have those essential things in your message, or else you're really going to lose a reader, and you're also not going to be able to get a lot of outlets or press to pick up on this, or news. They're not going to want to publish a story if the person can't read this and by even the first part of the message know the who, the what, the when, the why, and the how. And a vast majority of press releases are prepared and by email or via electronic distributing services, whether that be via Google or Outlook, or OneBox. But that's how they're being distributed. So that's how you need to think like a journalist. You need to be familiar with email. You have to be regularly updated on your email. Now, some small town papers do still potentially use mail-in press releases, but most people have transitioned over to a mail style or an email style press release. So that's something to consider when going through the distribution process and thinking about that, to be a well done PR professional. So, number 4, does it use search engine optimization techniques? Now, this is something that I wasn't really familiar with. I've done some internships in the past, but I wasn't really familiar, as they refer to it in the PR industry, as SEOs. So this process of selecting keywords for the press releases that make the content easily retrievable for someone when they search on Bing or Google or Yahoo, when they're utilizing those searches, this basically will push your message to the top of those search engines. It suggests to use 1 to 2 keywords in the first 65 to 70 words. So within that press release, once you hit that 70 word marker, you want to have 1 to 2 keywords so that that message is really pushed to the top and people understand the point. It's the same thing when you search on Google, tsunami in Indonesia. When you search that, you want to be able to have that press release should have tsunami in Indonesia, so it is immediately pushed to the top and the publics can get the information as soon as they possibly can. Google has tools that can help us with this, even as students. It's called Google AdWords, which can give a writer insight on what language to use in their articles. I was not familiar with this before I began my presentation, and it is extremely, extremely important. So now that you kind of have this mindset and this ideology on how to think like a journalist, let's talk about drafting a press release. So you need to identify the sender in the upper left-hand corner. Oh, we also need to, when we're drafting a press release, we also have to think about what is the key message. Excuse me, sorry about that. My slides got a little bit messed up and I apologize, but thank you for being patient. So when drafting a press release, you have to identify the sender in the upper left-hand corner. You have to provide the sender's name, the address, the phone, the fax number, and the email address, just so all of your information is clear and they are able to contact the necessary persons when addressing your press release. You need to provide a dateline. So they need to know where is it so for example, I provide an example in my slides, Minneapolis, Minnesota, June 21st, 2019. So when they're able to see that, they're able to know the date, they're able to know the location and the state, and so it's easy for them to disseminate that message, and you're able to make sure that it's applicable and understand the relevance of this press release. And they need to start the text with a clearly stated summary that contains the most important message you want to convey. So basically, right off the bat, I need to know why you are sending out this information and why this press release is important. The lead paragraph, it should only be 3 to 5 lines. Very short, very brief, but have that clear message as I touched upon earlier. And they should use 10 to 12 point font, such as Times New Roman or Courier. So nothing too flashy. A press release is supposed to just get that information out there quick and easy. Shouldn't be something that is frilly or over the top. It's just to get that information out to those different news organizations or press organizations so that that information can be distributed even farther. And you should never split a paragraph from one page to the next. So place the word more at the bottom of each page for the press release. Normally, press releases won't go over 2 pages. That's very uncommon. So normally in those situations, you won't have a ton of pages long. But you don't want to split those paragraphs. You want to make sure that they're clear and concise on each page, so it's easy for different organizations, if they want to distribute your message, to be able to transition between the 2 documents. So drafting a press release continuum. So place an identifying slug line. That's what we've talked about this a little bit in class, but a slug line is basically a title to indicate the story content. So especially, you want to be able to know when you read that headline, why am I here? Why am I reading this? And the page number as well. Be concise, remove puff words, don't use technical jargon, cliches, overused phrases. Most press releases are less than 2 pages, I mentioned that earlier. Double check all information. Be certain the facts are correct, especially in the title and the release are correct. You don't want errors. That is a public relations nightmare. We touched upon public relations crises before. Many of you have probably taken even some communication crisis classes as well, and sending out the wrong information is the nightmare that you all do not want to have to deal with at the end of the day. And to provide the boilerplate at the end of the paragraph so they know what the organization does and what is the purpose of your group. And localize whenever possible. Make it applicable to the publics and make sure that they are able to know like the severity, but also understand the local aspect of it, that it's not a worldwide, how it is impacting the individual community that you're trying to communicate, those target audiences as we touched upon earlier. Now, something that also we want to touch upon is drafting the multimedia press release. It's a little bit different. It's also referred to as a social media release. It includes high resolutions, photos or graphics, videos, audio components. A lot of this are normally used on social media, as I touched on earlier. The copy should be single space, so very brief, 200 to 250 words, so very short. This is something that we're going to be putting out online. So you want to be able to look at it on a singular phone screen. When you hold that in front of your face, you don't want to have to scroll super long. You're going to lose those readers' attention, so you want to be brief and you want to be concise. The subject line, and when you're sending out that information to different publics, should be in the email. And it should just catch that publisher's attention really quickly. So when I'm sitting at my desk for the Washington Post or the New York Times or Publico, and I see that email come in really quick, I want to be able to get my attention grasped really fast, and I want to see, is this newsworthy? Will I want to put this on my Twitter? Will I want to put this on my Facebook page? Will I want to put this on my Instagram? How am I going to be distributing this, and am I even going to be interested? So continuing drafting the multimedia press release. So the contact information should be given at the bottom of the email, not the top, just so they can get down to the nitty-gritty as soon as possible. Links to pages on keywords and key phrases to reinforce the message. Sometimes in those 200 to 250 words, you may not be able to get all the background information. So linking those keywords that we touched upon earlier within this first 65 to 70 lines, that's going to be vital so that can take them to more pages to get more information. And distribute the releases through a service that can support hyperlinks. So primarily the internet, a lot of different sources can support hyperlinks, but you want to particularly do that in a Word document because that can you can link hyperlinks through that service as well as email. And have high resolution media that can be easily downloaded. So something that's pretty tricky is sometimes online services such as Facebook or Twitter, you don't want to do something too high resolution because then it won't have the ability to be downloaded quickly by a user and they won't be able to see that file. So you want it to be, yes, high resolution, but also easy to download. Be selective about the photos and videos and make sure that they complement the message. I know recently with the coronavirus outbreak, a lot of industries had pushback because they were using images of Asian American individuals with messages that had to do with the coronavirus but had no correlation, and a lot of like mainstream media groups got a lot of pushback. I know NBC News got a lot of pushback, ABC News, and that was a PR crisis for them. And so we want to prevent that when we're doing our multimedia press releases. So we're now going to transition it over to our case study today. So our case study will be touching upon COVID-19 and basically how is that information being distributed during press releases. Obviously, I'm coming to you in quarantine at my home, social distancing, and it's a new world and it's a new conversation and something none of us have seen before firsthand. And so how are entities distributing that information to the publics and the media, and how are they getting that information out there is kind of what we're going to do a deeper dive in. And I have a couple different articles and things that we're going to analyze throughout our case study here today. One that I'd like to look at is something that's put out by the United States Food and Drug Administration. I'm sure you've heard it referred to as the FDA. So they did an FDA news release that was on March 21st. Most of the stuff is extremely recent just because of the way things have progressed within the last week since we've been able to see each other. So the coronavirus update, in parentheses COVID-19, FDA issues first emergency use authorization for point of care diagnostic. So those are a little bit, that is a lengthy title, but as you can see when you first start is they touch upon today the food and then it starts out, it says immediate release, dateline. Today the United States Food and Drug Administration issued the first emergency use authorization of point and care COVID-19 diagnostic tests. So this is talking about the FDA being able to start administering tests on the 21st. So that information has been pushed out by the Food and Drug Administration to a mass amount of publics. This is available on the Food and Drug Administration website, and this is really helpful so that news outlets and individuals concerned about this pandemic are able to get that information as soon as possible. So this is a United States wide press release. So it doesn't have it did not have the ability to be as localized as we had touched upon earlier, but it was trying to reach the masses as possible. So as you can see, even on the side, they also link all of their social media pages, as well as they talk about their regulated products. So they emphasize the messages that they want to send and the keywords, which is medical devices. So that will get pushed up to the Google algorithm that we touched upon earlier. And they obviously have many quotes and quote many doctors and make sure that the information is factual and relevant. That really helps with your credibility. So the next press release that we're going to observe upon the COVID-19 is from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. This is also a press release that they've done, which is the Governor Cooper requests major disaster declaration for COVID-19. So this is more localized to the state, with the governor touching upon the disaster ordinance that he had put in. And within the first sentence, in a letter to President Trump, Governor Roy Cooper has requested a major disaster declaration for the state of North Carolina due to the continuing impacts of COVID-19. Then it goes into a deeper dive of what Cooper says exactly this disaster declaration is and talks about its different regulations. But at the top you can see it's more localized. It has the location as Raleigh, North Carolina. It's March 24th, 2020. And the last article that I wanted to introduce is from the Illinois Department of Public Health. So public health officials announced that 330 new cases of coronavirus disease on the 25th of March 2020. And it says Springfield dash, so you know it is in the state's capital, and it says the United States, the Illinois Department of Public Health today announces, it has the title, includes 3 deaths in Kane County in his 90s, a Cook County man in his 60s, and Will County woman in her 50s. And it also talks upon they are reporting at 1,000. They have 1,865 cases now across 35 counties in Illinois, and the age ranges range from younger than 1 year old all the way to 99 years old. So it's really trying to get that information out quick and easy and make sure that the publics are getting this. So let's talk about, why are these considered press releases? So the titles are all used to indicate the story content. So right when we read the title, you knew after I said that what this was about. It provides a dateline and location, so you're able to know how recent is this information, how relevant it is to me. Especially those news and press organizations want the most recent and up-to-date content, so they need to know what date this was out. Especially, you saw in one of the releases, it's an immediate release, so you can tell that it was published as soon as possible. This information as pertinent and relevant as they can possibly get it. The lead paragraph was roughly 3 to 5 lines, even shorter than that in a lot of situations on these online articles, and it uses 10 to 12 point font, such as Times and New Roman. So as you can see, if we can flip back here, the font is a decent size. It's feasible to read and clear and concise, and you're not squinting or struggling to read it. It's very simplistic and easy to use. They're around 400 words. So the COVID-19 press releases, they're written to be concise. They remove the puff language or technical jargon. In these cases, that means these government entities are minimizing the difficult medical terminology that citizens and mass media can understand and communicate to the masses. So particularly, they're not using super difficult medical jargon terms that maybe an everyday citizen who doesn't have a medical background is understanding. I know particularly you've been seeing that with many governors and health officials. They have tried to minimize that language so that people aren't as confused and even more frustrated as they have been. The press releases are less than 2 pages long, and they catch the public's attention, and they provide them with the necessary information they need in the COVID-19 situation. I tried to pick a case study that was relevant and that we can all understand and connect with as a class. And I think that this is something that's really important. I know a lot of us have been following the news avidly and just trying to get the best background information. And I think that going to the hard-hitting sources, such as these press releases, can really give us that concise information. I know sometimes when press releases are given to those news organizations or those publication groups, they can create a little bit of a narrative and a storyline to them, and it can kind of take away from that factual background. But when we have these cases, it really helps. And so going into that, my AP style, press style presentation here. So what I did with the Associated Press style was states and cities, especially with the pandemic going on. A lot of states and cities across the country are being impacted, and they have different policies and laws. Every state is tackling this in a different way. Every school system across every county, across every state is tackling it in a different way. And so that information is trying to be distributed to the public, but we have to know as potential and future PR practitioners how we need to correctly write and how the public's going to understand that information. So this is as pertinent as now. I mean, you can see when I wrote these articles, they even touch upon in states and cities as well. And so one of the first things that is touched upon here is when the name of a state appears in the body of a text, you spell it out. So if I was just writing a sentence and I said, Purdue University is located in West Lafayette, Indiana, I would write out Indiana fully. But when the name of a city and state are used together, the name of the state should be abbreviated. There are exceptions to this rule, as always in the English language we see. That is Alaska, Hawaii, Idaho, Iowa, Maine, Ohio, Texas, and Utah. So those are more shorter names, shorter state names. The state should be abbreviated when used as the short form political abbreviation. So I provided an example here that would help you all out a little bit. So he was traveling to Nashville, and then it was Tennessee, but it's TNN period. The peace accord was signed in Dayton, Ohio, but Ohio is spelled full because it is one of those exceptions. The storm began in Indiana and moved west towards Peoria, Illinois. And Illinois is spelled ILL period. So when writing the press releases, these are the state abbreviations. You also can see that next to it is the U.S. Postal Code abbreviation. So, for instance, I know that we all study at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. So Indiana is IND period. So you would do West Lafayette, comma, IND period, not the U.S. postal form that is IN capitalized. And you're going to see this within other states. I'm trying to think of popular groups. So California, it's not the same. I know Indiana is IND, so that's only 3 letters. California, which their postal code is capital C, capital A, is CLIF period. So Calif. So it's a little bit longer than the Indiana style, which is IND period. And so AP style does not require the name of a state to accompany the name of the following 30 cities. So these are probably the largest cities we see in the U.S. Particularly because AP style is used primarily in the United States. They are United States cities. Across the world, it may be a case-by-case basis. I've seen in some other large mega cities such as London, for example, it will just say London, it won't say United Kingdom. But these are primarily based in the United States. So, for example, one of the cities that you would expect is New York. That's a given, but even Indianapolis is on this list. So, even a smaller level city that's close to West Lafayette, that's on there. Washington, D.C., you see St. Louis. So, bigger cities in the United States that most people are commonly familiar with, you'll see this. So I just wanted to talk about, and I know that it's supposed to be a little bit of some audience engagement in this presentation, and I know it's a little bit hard since considering we don't have an audience anymore. But I just wanted to throw out the question and see what the audience's experience is with press releases and what their background is with it. That's mainly my question to you all. I also want you to utilize these services when taking on internships and other things like that. So, I hope that you got something out of this, but I really hope that the audience considers how in the future they will utilize this information that they were given and how they will use that moving forward in their career, wherever they'll be going after they graduate, if you all are graduating this year, or going into next year in your new courses, or even into your summer positions, wherever you will be this summer. And I know it's a tough time, and I know there isn't a big future, so I want you all to stay optimistic and positive. And I greatly appreciated the class, and I'm going to miss you all, but I appreciate you all sticking with me today. It's been a little tough, but I hope this presentation is a little bit riveting. I'm sorry it may be a little confusing behind me and with the lighting and everything, and I wish I was in more of a classroom setting to engage with you all. I was really looking forward to it, but I hope you consider this all moving forward. I've also provided some references at the end of this PowerPoint, which I'll click to right here. So just for reference, if the audience has any questions, I am more than willing to take them. I will provide you all with my email. It is rnigh@purdue.edu. So if you would like to reach out to me with any questions or concerns, or just wanting to get any more information, I would love to hear it. But I hope that you gained a lot from this experience, and I hope that you all gain some valuable information. As I touched upon earlier, this is the biggest form PR practitioners use of getting information out there to the media, whether that is going to be in corporate life, agency life, or nonprofit work, or even working for a government entity. Our case study today was all government entity work. So especially now in these times of pandemic, we really need to have that communication with our healthcare systems, with our government, with our congressmen and women, and that information is primarily distributed through very cut and dry, concise press releases, and people like us will be doing that work in the future. So I think we all are really excited, and I'm excited to see where the world takes us, but I hope you're all at home and wherever you are, cozy and trying to just social distance and get through this together. Thank you all.